The transfer portal is closing today, and Iowa still doesn't have a backup quarterback. How concerned should we be? We break it all down today. Locked on Hawkeyes.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube. While you're there, hit that subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Well, here we sit today on the final day of April, and that means the transfer portal is coming to a close. Now, this does not mean that nobody can make commitments after today. This isn't some kind of deadline, but in order to enter yourself into the portal, it has to be done by today. And Iowa still looking around for a couple of need positions. Just not a whole lot of information out there. Now, saw a post earlier today from Brad Heinrichs, the leader of the Swarm Collective, and a huge part when we talk about recruiting and the way things are set up. He said that he feels good about where things are at this point in time. There just hasn't been a ton of information out there, and it leads to the speculation, the concern of what's going to happen and what it's going to be. We'll talk about that a little bit today. Also, Scott Dochterman is going to join us. We'll talk with Doc a little bit about the NFL draft, what happened there, and I'll look forward to the Iowa football season coming up in front of this. Plus, we got some Iowa baseball as the baseball team, a couple of midweek games before they have a important series against Northwestern. Just 2 series left in the Big Ten calendar for the Hawkeyes as they will finish up with a matchup against Florida International at the end of the season over here in Des Moines. That means only 6 more chances to rack up wins and at minimum qualify themselves for the Big Ten baseball tournament. But back to the portal and what is happening. So when the portal opened up and a couple of days into it, we were looking for names, backup quarterback names. I think we all felt even before Deacon Hill put his name in the transfer portal that everybody understood the importance of a backup quarterback. We saw a year ago that Deacon Hill was certainly not the answer. It was as bad a quarterback play as maybe we have ever seen before, not just at the University of Iowa, but major conference football. I mean, he was just absolutely brutal, a turnover machine, and coupled with a bad offense, a bad scheme, you were left with what they were. Not only was the play poor, but another, I think, important component to that conversation about him is another piece, and that is this. There was just so much negativity that was surrounding him, his play. I think that was something that was just too difficult to come back from. There are certain players, there are certain situations that once it goes as negative as it did with Deacon Hill, there's never getting back the fan base. It gets to that level. And I believe the same thing happened with Spencer Petras and going into his final season. It was just so negative. It didn't matter really what he did to his capabilities. It wasn't going to be good enough. And everybody was going to be waiting for that inevitable other shoe to drop. The other important part of this and a backup quarterback is, all right, we've seen Marco Lainez, still a ways to go. He can move. He's athletic. He's got certainly versatility with his legs. However, he's just not there as a passer, certainly at this point in time. The hope is now with a real quarterback coach, somebody that knows what he's doing in Tim Lester, has played the position, has coached the position, that they're going to be in a lot better shape than they have been over the last couple of years when they went into seasons without a real quarterback coach. Brian Ferentz was never that. And we definitely saw that play out over the last couple of seasons. But you need somebody else. We don't know about the health of Cade McNamara. He appears to be all systems go by June. He'll be 100% ready to go, but the injury concerns still lie there. And it's going to be a huge, huge part of it. And Brendan Sullivan of Northwestern was one of the guys that made sense. He was recruited by Tim Lester when Lester was at Western Michigan, was a starter at the Big Ten level, and was okay. So this is not a great quarterback. This is not a guy that you're beating down the door saying, we have to have Brendan Sullivan for any chance at all for Iowa to be okay this season. Look, if Cade McNamara is healthy all season long, you're good. You're fine. You're in great shape if you get a completely healthy 100% Cade McNamara. Can he ever get back to 100%? Will we see that? Those are still questions. But if we do get that, Iowa's going to be in really good shape. We know the defense is going to be elite. There is hope that this offense is going to take a step forward. And with all those different things, you're left saying, all right, this is going to be okay. Sullivan, his last game was against Iowa a year ago. Went 12-19 for 81 yards. Oh, boy. That one kind of sounds like a little bit of a Brian Ferentz type of quarterback. Ran the ball 160 yards, a couple touchdowns last year, so has an ability to run the football. And not only that, he was sacked 24 times last season. Shows you those 160 yards, they'd be a whole lot higher when you take those sacks out of there. This is a guy that can move around a little bit. There just hasn't been a whole lot of information. So I was playing around. I was getting on the recruiting websites and trying to find something, right? A little something. Is there a name to get excited about? If it isn't Sullivan, who else is out there? The pickings are incredibly thin. That is one thing that I realized looking in there. A lot of guys that have never played, guys even at the lower levels of the FBS, guys from the Sun Belt, guys from places like that just never played. And that's who's out there at this point in time. But there was one name that, at least at one time, was considered one of the brightest stars in college football coming in, and that is Sam Heward. Now, you remember the name Heward. His dad, Damon Heward, at Washington. His uncle, Brock Heward, who we now see broadcast games on Fox. He's in the portal. Started his career at Washington. No surprise, fouled dad there. Was a starter for a season also before finishing up his last season this past year at Cal Poly. This past year, the lefty threw for 2,200 yards, 18 touchdowns, nearly 250 yards per game, second in the Big Sky in touchdowns. Pretty good. Set a school record, 38 completions against Sacramento State, and 6 touchdown passes. All right. Pretty good. Pretty good. You wonder, all right, was this one that would make sense? Is this a place that I will be willing to go? Here's the biggest thing. This is not a one-year rental. He does have 2 years of eligibility, and he's looking around the landscape and wants to jump back up to the power conference level. There aren't a whole lot of opportunities, and probably not opportunities like this. You're going in against a veteran quarterback, yes, and Cade McNamara. The likely starter is going to be McNamara, but you have an ability to go up and compete with him for the starting job. And if you don't get it, you're the backup this season and a definite leg up to be the starter in 2025. It's a name. I have not seen anything. Was there any coaches following him, anything like that? But just one to put out there. He's a left coast guy. He's been out there on the West Coast for a long time. You never know. Make the phone call, see if it happens, or maybe it's already done. There just hasn't been a whole lot of buzz. A little bit concerning at the very least, because to go into a season with only 3 scholarship quarterbacks, that's a scary situation to have. There's been plenty of times where we've seen teams that go down to the 4th, 5th team. Well, Iowa doesn't have that. You don't have that, and injuries crop up again. You have an injured quarterback, the other guy that runs around a bunch in Lioness. What happens when you run a lot? You might get banged up. And then a true freshman in James Rezar. Yikes. That is scary. Let's talk to Doc. Scott Dochterman's going to join us here from The Athletic, the Iowa beat writer on the Iowa Beat. Hear from him a little bit. We also got some Iowa baseball conversation as the Hawkeyes fall 2 out of 3. A great performance, though, from Brody Breck over the weekends against Nebraska. We'll talk about that as well. Scott Dochterman joins us as we continue. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA. It makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. I love the ability to go with the all-in pricing, not have to worry about those surprise fees at checkout, and all of a sudden that ticket is a whole lot more than you anticipated. Not the case with Gametime. Toggling the all-in price feature shows you your total up front. And get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Know exactly where you're going to be. Inside the stadium, inside the arena, they have you covered. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Today's episode is also brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. You're not going to find a better offer than that out there right now. $150, win or lose. Love the sound of that one with FanDuel. And you can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
Hello, Scott Dochterman. How are you?
I'm doing well, guys. How's it going today?
Doing pretty well. Appreciate you coming on. So, Torrey Taylor to the Bears, one of my favorite picks in the draft, quite honestly, because for a lot of reasons, he was such a difference maker with the University of, and now he gets to stay with one of our 4 regional teams. And I think the Bears get a good one. And you are a Bears fan, Scott Dochterman. Your thoughts on the pick?
Yeah, I mean, to separate my personal feelings from that, I just wanted to kind of say that I think he's really an impactful player, and he has been for Iowa, where I looked at, I think I examined 4 games where his performance tipped the balance in Iowa's favor. I would say back in 2021, when they were ranked the top 10 and went all the way up to number 2, I would say that the Penn State and Iowa State games were Torrey Taylor games. I would say that the South Dakota game, where he parked 2 punts inside the 8-yard line that led to safeties and a 7-3 win. And then last year at Wisconsin, I think he was really impactful. So overall, to go to the Bears, you're looking at somebody like him to help a new offense with a new quarterback, new receiver, change of pace, and he can bail out an offense that maybe struggles or gets in trouble from time to time. So I think it's a huge pick for Chicago to have a punter that's a weapon like that.
Cooper DeJean falls to the second round. A lot of ink about that one and a lot of talk, and a lot of the draft people surprised by it. Take us through what maybe led to the fall. Is it just as simple as people aren't sure what position he is, if he is an outside corner or if he's more of that hybrid kind of player?
I think you've got to look at it beyond just Cooper DeJean and look at it holistically, which was 6 quarterbacks went in the top 12, and the first 14 players were offensive players. So then you got to basically jam all these defensive players and the rest of the offensive players. There are several over that the next 18 picks. I think 19 were offensive players. So when you're looking at that with somebody like Cooper DeJean, teams have a set on what they're looking at as far as cornerbacks go. And maybe he doesn't quite fit the exact prototype at cornerback, which has a premium over nickel or safety. And so that's why he was widely considered probably the number 4 corner. But he was highly valued, obviously, and Philadelphia gave up 2 twos, a 50 and a 53, to move up to 40. And again with a divisional rival in Washington. So highly valued player. He slipped to the second round, but it wasn't a tragic drop like somebody tried to persuade me on Twitter. I was like, it didn't fall out of the draft. Second round. And he'll be just fine. So I think he's in a great spot. Him and Quinion Mitchell have an opportunity to flip the birds from being what they were to what they could be.
Save that one, Doc, for a column. That's a terrific line. And it's an area of need with Philadelphia, right? I mean, that was the biggest need, was their secondary going into it, and they checked 2 boxes with their first 2 picks. And look, I think now become again, along, I guess, with the Niners as the upper echelon of the NFC. I'd love the draft pick. All right, so Doc, your piece today, kind of looking forward, because it's never too early to look forward to what might happen next year. Does the what I think I read in your piece, 27 overall first round picks, Doc, for the Hawkeyes?
Yeah, I think that's right. So 26, 27.
So 28 potentially next year. What do you think the chances are?
I think they're good. And I thought Cooper would be a first rounder too, but I think the quarterback situation really manipulated the draft.
Yep.
But I think it's really good. I'm bullish on Luke Lachey. I think he can be the best tight end in the country. I talked to a couple of people who were like, when I said, well, what's his value? This is before he declared he was going to come back. And they said, wow, he might be the second best tight end in the draft this year, if he decides to come out. Now, that could all go through the wash and end up downward, but I still think he's got the skills and the starter kit that's probably better than any of his preceding tight ends, including a Hawkinson, a Fant, and he's not as athletic necessarily as Fant, but he's bigger than they all are, and he's got a great catch radius. I think he's got an opportunity to be a first rounder next year.
If it's not him, who would be the guy that also has a chance to be a first rounder? It would take a ton. I get that. And you kind of look at all these guys, especially the very veteran guys. It's hard to all of a sudden become a top 32 pick this late in your career when you're not kind of looked that way. Is there a name or two though with an incredible season that could get themselves into the first round?
Y.A. Black.
Yeah.
I'm very bullish on him as well. I think he's a terrific player. He doesn't showcase a lot of statistics because of the position he plays. A defensive tackle at Iowa, you're asked to two gap. You don't necessarily get a lot of statistics. You're tying up blockers in most cases, and then you're ending up handing those off to the linebackers to get their incredible numbers that they've had in recent years. But he's probably the next one, and then beyond that, it's hard because I would say, you probably dip into that 3-year guys,
Yep.
Who can make that jump. And, an Aaron Gray.
That's the name on my list, Doc.
Yeah. Those would be guys that I think have that chance. But I think still too early to project both of them because they were just starting to become quality players, if you will, last year. I think they've got a chance. They should be exceptional players, but I'm not sure that they're first-round players.
I got one other name for you. Deontay Craig. He had a disappointing year last year. I know I heard he was pretty banged up last season, but he had 7.5 sacks as a sophomore, just 3 last season. Rangy, 6'3", 266. Definitely has that look. If he puts together a solid season where he, is approaching double digits of sacks, could he get there? Does he have, I guess, the athletic profile to get to that kind of spot?
Anything is possible, but I would say probably not.
Yeah.
I think he's probably more of a upper mid-round guy at best, third tops, but probably more fourth, fifth. I'd probably put Jay Higgins kind of in the same boat.
Yep.
Because you have to have certain physical qualities to get into that category, even if you're even what you've done in college is beyond that. You have to have, if you're an edge rusher, you have to have a get off, or, you have to be really long and athletic. I mean, look at a Will McDonald, a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
He's got that, lengthy, long, great first step. And unless you're really powerful at the point of attack and bull rushing guys, and then even then you're probably more of an interior guy. That's why I probably wouldn't put Craig in that category. But that said, I think, yes, he's a draftable prospect for sure, and he's a potential player at that level. It's just I wouldn't put him in that first round category.
Noah Shannon. So a two-parter, Doc. Obviously, the news that came out late in the week that there's going to be a lawsuit filed on behalf of multiple. Apparently, there's another one coming. Another group of attorneys that represent the list of players for both schools that weren't involved in the original suit. There's still one more. So Noah Shannon, what's the chances that? Can he make a practice squad at this point? Is that ultimately where the dream would start for him? Just to, get your foot in the door, make a practice squad. As we recall, he didn't play at all last year. Might that be his ceiling this year? And then the off the field stuff, the lawsuit that's coming up. Boy, certainly seems from this seat to have. He's got a pretty good chance. They all do have a pretty good chance of prevailing in a suit that I'll be surprised if it sees the light of day. But Noah Shannon on the field and off the field.
All right, let's start on the field with Noah Shannon. And when you look at his prospects, he's got, in Oakland, Las Vegas now. I revert back. They've got 2 starting tackles, defensive tackles that are pretty entrenched there. Christian Wilkins, they signed as a free agent, and Tyree Wilson, who they drafted in the first round. They're going to have every opportunity to start and play. That said, the Raiders really recruited him this offseason. And so he was happy to sign with them on Saturday, or agree to terms and then sign with them. And, they play a 4-3. I think he's got a chance to make the roster there as kind of that fringe hinge guy, if you will, where maybe in the next, maybe he's a cut guy and then he goes to the practice squad, then he's brought up. That happens a lot with fringy guys. But I think, he didn't play last year, but in some small respects, and this is what I wrote last week, it actually helped him because he had the torn labrum and shoulder reconstruction in January of last year, and he wasn't even cleared until mid-August to start practicing. So having a full year of health to that shoulder will probably help him. Now, off the field, that lawsuit that was filed by Van Plum and Associates, Matt Bowles and them on Friday in federal court, and the other one that's coming by the Sandy law firm that represents 7 more former athletes. I don't know if I will predict what will happen there, but it seems to me that it'll be difficult and challenging for the state of Iowa to prove that it was working with the law in the right way. I would say that it's probably a better than average chance that they will settle that suit. For how much, I don't know. I think it would be sizable, though. I mean, the facts of the case at this point, without giving the state an opportunity to respond, seem to be very much in favor of the athletes whose rights were infringed upon, allegedly.
Doc, there is so much to this. I mean, ultimately, how do you think this is going to end? Does this get to a courtroom? Do we get that far? Are we talking about settling out of court?
My guess is, and this is what happens in most cases, is there's a settlement. And there will be also a suit filed against the state of Iowa in state court, when what the lawyers have to do is actually file with the state intending to sue, and then the state has 6 months to respond. So there are going to be multiple lawsuits in federal and state court. I'm sure there will be a settlement to make sure that they don't have to defend themselves twice. And so how much, again, I don't know. And I'm only speculating here, but that would be my guess, is there would be some sort of settlement. What
have you got coming up this week at The Athletic, Doc?
Right now I'm writing about the undrafted free agents across the board. Me and Nick Baumgartner did all the grades over the weekend for our site, and we did pretty well. And then this one is he and I are going through each team and picking our favorite undrafted free agent. And then later this week, I'm writing about the Big Ten and all of the happenings going on in the league in the offseason.
Scott Dochterman from The Athletic joining us here on Locked On Hawkeyes. We continue. Time to talk a little baseball, Iowa baseball. 2 games midweek before 2 series left in the Big Ten season. What does Iowa have to do to make the Big Ten tournament? Scott Dochterman, great information from him. Always appreciate his time. We continue back in a moment talking some Hawkeye baseball. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that. There's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much more to get. Unique stickers that you can trade with friends and compete for complete albums for big prizes. Cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. Trent Condon back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. So a disappointing, in a way, series against Nebraska over the weekend as Iowa falls 2 out of 3 to the Huskers. But really the best news has been the re-emergence here over the last couple of starts from Brody Brecht. It has been certainly a disappointing season overall from this Iowa pitching staff. At the beginning of the season, it was a whole bunch of concerns about the bullpen, the blown leads against Auburn and Virginia, Wichita State, a couple of them against Ole Miss. Opportunities were there. Iowa wasn't able to cash in. And though this Big Ten slate has not gone perfectly, they are showing signs. And if they can get this kind of Brody Brecht now going forward, there's a chance. Now, Iowa's likely going to have to win the Big Ten tournament in order to be an NCAA tournament team. Their RPI going into the game later today against Illinois State is at 98. Illinois State 146. Then they get North Dakota State tomorrow. They come in with an RPI of 237. The series this weekend against Northwestern, this is one at home. You talk about, well, win series, right? Pile up. No, you probably need to sweep this one because they finish up at Illinois. That's going to be incredibly difficult. Top 8 teams make the Big Ten tournament. Iowa currently sits in 6th place, 2.5 games out of first place, where Purdue and Illinois sit in the top spot. Nebraska game back, as is Indiana and Michigan, and there are the Hawkeyes sitting in 6th. But on their heels is Ohio State, Michigan State, Maryland. All 3 of those teams still with an opportunity. That's 9 teams. Again, only 8 make it. If Iowa gets a sweep here against Northwestern, they likely lock themselves in to the Big Ten tournament. And then we can start dreaming a little bit. You go into that series finale against Illinois with a ton to play for. Illinois had a couple of losses over the weekend. Potentially, Iowa can put something together. It's going to take a lot of work to get there. A lot's going to need to happen and go their way to even be a bubble type of team. But it's going to have to be a whole bunch of victories in order for that to happen. But Brody Brecht, we're going to hear his name called come June in the amateur draft. It's going to be high. Is it a first rounder anymore? That's to be determined. But just seeing that, putting it all together, we know about the elite talent that he has. Would love to see him, obviously, be able to put it all together here at the end of the year, make Iowa have a little bit of a run. And because the bullpen has improved, I think you have a little bit more hope going into the Big Ten tournament than certainly you did just a couple of weeks ago, as that bullpen has been playing a whole lot better. They finish up the year at home. In a way, it'll be not in Iowa City, though, in Des Moines, right here in my stomping grounds, as they will take on Florida International to wrap up the season. Should be a really cool scene over there at Sec Taylor to wrap up the regular season before, hopefully, fingers crossed, making their way to Omaha and the Big Ten tournament. We'll keep you up to date as we do each and every day with the quarterback situation. Does anything else emerge in the next day or two? We got you covered on the transfer portal. What's happening at the wide receiver position? Are there any new names that potentially Iowa could be looking at? We will keep an eye on that one. Apologies, not with you on Monday this week. Making my way back, was back home as we celebrated my father's life, and definitely had a great time back home in little New Haven, Iowa. For the people up north that maybe know about the little town that I grew up in. And so a little late getting things going this week, but we got you covered every day here for the rest of the week, and a lot of Hawkeye talk. We're going to start to dig in a little bit deeper. What's going to happen with Matt Cross, the big man in the transfer portal on the basketball front? The women's roster is set. We'll dive into that as well. A whole lot going on. Spring sports finishing up. It's a busy time, and we got you covered, your team every day here on the Locked On Network. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Go Hawks.